Stackable apartment pods for housing. That's our Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. Joining us from a company called Cassette is founder and CEO Dafna Kaplan. Hi, Dafna.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Well, you are bringing innovation to housing with your company. Give us the overview of what Cassette is up to.
Sure. So I'll make the assumption that the most construction experience your audience has is maybe a kitchen remodel. And if that's the case, you probably know already how inefficient construction is. Take that to the commercial level where you're building a multifamily apartment, and that inefficiency remains. And so predominantly the experience of real estate developers is that projects are over budget, they take longer than planned, and there's a lot of really complicated reasons for that. So Cassette is aiming to take what is really what we've come to be used to in the product world as process improvement and efficiency, R&D, product prototyping, and putting that into a finished product that is an apartment building. That is an apartment that gets stacked into a building ultimately. And so it removes a lot of the risk, at least on the part of the building that's prefabricated in a factory. But it also reduces over time the cost because you finally get that process improvement that has been elusive in construction for so many decades.
So that people can envision this, we're going to include some images here so people can see what we're talking about, those of you who are watching instead of listening. And if you're listening, we urge you to go watch as well. So describe for us what these look like and how what you're doing is so different. Modular housing has been around for a while. This is something completely different.
Yeah, it is not your grandfather's modular or your grandfather's manufactured housing. If you were to walk into an apartment that was a cassette apartment, you would not necessarily know that it was built with modular technology or modular means and methods. It's just a beautiful one-bedroom apartment. It's just under 600 square feet, designed by a fairly famous, this product was designed by a very famous duo in California modernism. So it's a warm, modern, open floor plan, one-bedroom apartment. Every sort of nook and cranny takes advantage of design to add little storage nooks and surprising areas and beautiful lighting that really, if you were to build a building site built or the traditional way, it would be a lot more expensive to get all of these details and that level of quality built in.
So how did this come about, Dafna? What's your background and what led to this?
Oh my goodness. Do you have 3 hours? So actually my background is I spent 10 years in the consumer product space. I worked for my early career, my early 20s. I worked for a company called Clarion that made automotive tech OEM for most of the auto manufacturers in Japan. And so I had sort of an early filter, I'd say career-wise, as to what Kaizen or Japanese lean manufacturing could look like. And as the world progressed in the product world and industrialization and became more and more efficient, I had life circumstances that transitioned me about, I want to say 17 years ago, to the architecture and construction sector. And so I've sort of watched the emergence of the prefab movement in architecture and construction with the lens of this early experience in product and manufacturing. And I felt like there was something that was always being left on the table, which was this ability to improve a product and make it more and more efficient over time. Because the biggest, even if you did a 200 unit apartment building and you made them all the same, that's 200 products. And you can imagine in consumer products, if you made 200 of anything, you're still kind of in the prototyping stage and you barely amortized your tooling. And it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And there's a lot of reasons in real estate that it's very difficult to take the same thing and reutilize it over multiple projects. But I believe with the narrow focus that we have on a one-bedroom apartment to launch, there's an opportunity to do that and to get a single unit into the thousands and to start approaching this amazing trend we have in manufacturing where you can start to get the cost down through process improvement over time.
And is there a limit to, I'm sure there is, as to how many of these can be stacked?
So the product we've launched is designed to go to 5 or 6 stories, depending on the soil conditions. And that is primarily structural, for structural reasons, but there's another reason in construction. And that is that when you get beyond a certain height in high rise, your fire codes change. And so the structure is capable of supporting a high rise. We make a little tweaks to it to make it fit code. But the predominant change would have to be to add an extra layer of fireproofing to certain aspects of the module. So that may be a second product that we launch or a version of this that we launch. But the predominant usage for multifamily right now of one-bedroom apartments is on sort of this low to mid-rise range.
So tell us what you're aiming at, who these are intended for, where, what is the market that you're aiming at with these structures?
Sure. Really, it's the middle of the market, I guess, is what I would say I'm targeting. Although we know in the product world that you think you're releasing a product for one thing, and then someone completely different could end up purchasing it. But the purpose behind this design and this layout for a one-bedroom was our observation that the real estate development community was really only able to make a deal pencil, is how we say it. They were only able to make a construction project work if they were building a project for luxury tenants, like high-end condos, or if they were subsidized by the government to be doing affordable housing, which I would say affordable with a capital A, sort of that government subsidized affordable housing. And what's been happening for decades is that nobody has really been building multifamily housing for the middle. And in many cities, they call it the missing middle. And the demand for that product, the demand for sort of a 1 to 2 person household, which is about 78% of the rental market, sort of average middle income workforce folks, there's just very little product getting built for that market.
So give us an idea. Of course, there are probably quite a few variables. What it would cost to build a unit.
Sure. It's a hard answer. I mean, it's a hard question to answer. I'm not being elusive because we are selling a part of the building. We're not selling the whole building. And so it would be like asking somebody who makes elevators, like, what does it cost per unit? It sort of depends on what else the developer's putting in the building. So it's hard to sort of divide up how they're going to rent that apartment. I can tell you on average, we sell by quantity. So if a developer is doing 20 units or 100 units or 300 units, they get a better price as they order higher quantity, like in most product. So an average developer, say, is doing a 100-unit building. The price point we're starting with is $150,000 installed. So that means we build the apartments, we deliver them, we structurally connect them together. And then there are all of the other aspects of the building that developer is putting on there that would add to that cost. And at the end of the day, they would have a formula that they would rent those apartments for that provided a good return on that.
Interesting. So the advantages that you have in building them this way. And describe for us again what they are made out of. You talked about steel, but tell us a little bit more about the construction and what people would find in these. Are they complete with appliances and such, or tell us more?
They are. Imagine walking to a fully finished, sort of beautiful apartment, kitchen finishes, fixtures, appliances, everything. And that actually is what we deliver and install on site. And there's a plumbing and electrical connection that get made in the hallway. So it is a completely finished unit that's built off site while the general contractor is preparing the land and the foundations. And it's, in a crude sense, it's a process, and modular in general is a process innovation where you're just doing two things in parallel and you're cutting that schedule sometimes in half. And
the price would be considerably less. Give us an idea over traditional construction.
Sure. So it depends on the market you're in. Are you building in an expensive city to build like San Francisco or Los Angeles or Seattle, or are you in the middle of the country? It's very different. Right now, our price points to start make the most sense in the higher construction cost markets like the West Coast. So if we were building a cassette building, say in Oakland, building in a much higher quality build, which is a steel structure, that's what we build, would actually be, from a cost perspective, competitive or less than building out of wood on site. And the reason, and what your listeners might not understand, is that when you build a structure out of wood, it's sometimes more difficult to do that modularly above 3 or 4 stories, because wood has a lot more movement in it that makes the tolerances a little bit harder to stack. So steel gives you a very precise way to stack these taller, but it also gives you the ability to have huge openings and windows and sliding doors and generous natural light that are more difficult in a wood structure, because you need more sort of structure in wood to carry the same amount of weight.
Really interesting. So are these being used today, or tell us where you are in the process of bringing them to market? Sure.
We launched our product in an industry event a week ago Thursday, so fairly early in that sense. But we're launching with 2 projects. I can't be specific about them on the air, but within a couple of months, we'll be able to talk about them. A couple of projects in the Los Angeles area that are going to be breaking ground in 2023.
Such a problem today, as we all know, with homeless and even senior housing and such. Are you aiming to try to help solve some of those issues with this type of housing?
1,000%. It was part of the motivation for starting the company. There is part of the housing inaffordability.
If you don't mind starting that answer again, because you had some breakup there, Dafna.
Sure. 3, 2, 1. Absolutely. The homeless crisis and the inaffordability of housing was the motivation, among other things, for starting the business. So the long-term play there, or the big piece of what we're doing, is trying to reverse this dangerous escalation in cost. And a lot of that is due, in the last 2 or 3 decades, research is showing it's really the underbuilding. The US has underbuilt housing for decades, and we're getting slower and slower at building. So to increase the speed at which we can put housing into the market, but then also housing, as I mentioned earlier, that is more driven toward the masses and middle income costs, the more we increase that supply. And on the immediate, we have a relationship with a 501c3 that helps homeless youth gain independence over the course of 2-3 years. And so for every so many units we sell, we fund one of those homeless youth through that program to independence, because we feel a responsibility to not only solve the problem a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, but to do something right now. As long as there's profitability in the housing business, and we feel like this is a real growth area in construction, we think there should be a give back to solve that immediate problem.
Wonderful. So where can people go for more information? You
can go to our website, cassettesystems.com, cassette spelled just like the old time cassette, and systems is plural. And there's an email link on there as well to just inquire directly any questions they might have.
Terrific. Well, we wish you a lot of success with this and what you're trying to do. Dafna Kaplan, thank you for taking the time with us.
Thank you so much, Fred. Take care.